and welcome back to the Armchair QBs. I'm your host, Calum Buchan, and alongside me, as always, is Dan.
Week 17 in the bag. Seeing as I've not said that all fucking week. Sorry, I swear. Seeing as I've not said that all year, I felt as though I needed to get it in at least once.
Yeah, and sad times. End of the regular season. We've now only got a couple of weeks left of football. February 7th. That's when
This
it'll
is
all go
this is
away.
the best. Yeah, but this is the best part.
Yeah, it's about to be the best part, but I do miss my Sunday just being filled with red zone action constantly. Now that it slows down, it gets a bit better, but I still miss that rush of Scott Hansen telling me
Yeah,
that there are 7 hours of commercial-free football.
going from seeing everything all at once to kind of having to muddle your way through one game at a time is going to be a bit difficult. But the way that it's set up is it's 3 games on the Saturday, 3 games on the Sunday, all nicely spaced out. So just don't start drinking too early.
Yes, that's good advice. Although I'm doing a dry January, so no issue for me. And good luck to everybody else who's observing dry January.
And good luck to everyone else who's lying about doing dry January because you're all in the house and nobody can keep you to it.
Yeah, exactly. Now's the perfect time to do it. There's no consequences. It's only between you and your morals. Um, let's look back on week 17. We'll kind of breeze through these games. We'll talk about some things if there's something noteworthy, but then we'll spend a bit more time just previewing the wildcard games than we do normally when we're doing our quick picks. Starting off, Packers took on the Chicago Bears. Green Bay 35, Chicago 16. Packers really came into this. They did need to win it because if they lost, then they were at risk of losing the 1 seed. So it was a very efficient performance by Aaron Rodgers, I think you could say.
Yeah, I mean that's them 13-3 for two years in a row. Rodgers MVP, and unbelievably or not, Mitchell Trubisky couldn't do anything to unseat Aaron Rodgers in this one. But somehow the Bears still fall into the playoffs. I think looking back at 5-2 of the Bears, calling them the most fraudulent team in the world, and somehow they've then only managed to win 3 games since then and stumble into the playoffs. It's one of these positions where we've jokingly fired a lot of GMs, coaches throughout the year, but I think the Bears are probably the biggest contenders for where a complete clean sweep of GM, coach, and quarterback is a legitimate kind of thing to look at. But the problem is they've got to the playoffs. So I don't see it happening now. But if any team needed to kind of get a revamp and change the decision makers, I mean, they only started playing better on offense in the last 4 weeks when they played bad defenses, and Nagy gave up the play calling. So I don't know. We're both talking about two playoff teams here. The Packers are the Packers. They're going to get home field advantage throughout, and I think they'll be fine at least the divisional round because obviously they get the bye, and then I don't think anyone's going to bother them too much in the divisional round, and then we'll see where we are. But the Bears being in the playoffs, I think, is almost worse than the Redskins being in the playoffs.
Football team, Dan.
Whatever. Yes, football team. Sorry, is better than the football team. Is worse than the football team being in the playoffs.
Okay. Next up, we had the Saints taking on the Panthers. The Panthers had already got into the 5 wins that we had projected for them, so they weren't really bothered about this game. Saints obviously had to win this they were trying to steal that 1 seed. Ends up 33-7 to New Orleans. Panthers weren't really in it. I think the issue that you have for the Panthers now is that they could see a lot. Well, they were already seeing some of their offensive staff being picked away. So it's just who they bring in to replace them and try and keep that momentum or build on the momentum from this season.
Yeah, that's all for the off-season. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. Joe Brady getting head coaching looks. I was just a year out. With that, but fuck it. That's what it has to be. But the Saints are at home until the NFC Championship game at a minimum. So they're going to be praying for some sort of Packers upset at some point, because them going to Lambeau for any sort of championship game would be just the worst thing in the world for them, given Breeze's arm. So this game happened. It didn't change anything. Saints stay in second, and the Panthers stay at 5 wins. So
yeah,
not the worst team in the division though, but that's about as much as can be said.
yeah. I mean, we at the start of the year we kind of pegged the Panthers as they were in rebuilding phase, and that stands true. I think we need to kind of judge them at the end of next year. That's when we'll see how this project's going.
I mean, they didn't have McCaffrey for the season. I mean, I know he played a couple of games, but let's just kind of take it as they didn't have their $16 million quarter running back at all, and so that kind of hamstrung them a little bit for on offense. But they still got some good production, and that's why Joe Brady's getting looks. But yeah, just Panthers are going to hire a new GM. They're going to have to probably hire a new OC. I think Joe Brady would probably be better just staying in place, if I'm quite honest, because I think he's obviously had those growing pains as a young offensive play caller in the league, and the idea that he would then be thrown into being a head coach is great for the resume, great for your life, great for your wallet, but you just have to look at Zach Taylor and think, do I really want to be in the same position Zach Taylor is in 2 years? I know I've no doubt that Joe Brady will believe in himself, but I think he has to choose his opportunity very, very carefully, rather than just taking the first head coaching interview that he's given and potentially offered.
Yeah, I agree with that. Next, we have the Dolphins, who got slaughtered by the Bills 56-26. The Bills had nothing to play for in this game, and they just went out and murdered Miami. Tua threw 3 picks. It's come out, everybody saying that Tua was, bad in this game. He wasn't great, but he did not get an awful lot of help from his wide receivers during this. I mean, one of the picks is because the wide receiver fell down mid-route. The number of drops was pretty... There was a couple of really bad drops by the Dolphins wide receivers, but at the same time, I don't want to take anything away from the Bills, because that Bills defense looked really good, and the Bills offense was scary good, like Kansas Chief levels good, against a very talented Miami defense.
Yes and no. The Bills are a force to be reckoned with, because they are what the NFL doesn't, what any other NFL team in the playoffs doesn't want to have to play. A team coming to the fore just at the right time. They've had their dip in the middle of the season, and they've come back, and they have essentially, since their bye, been unstoppable. Just finding out what they're good at and continuing to do it. Josh Allen came in, played a half, and that was the game done. I mean, the Dolphins just were never in this game whatsoever. And a lot of that was because of the poor play of Tua. Now, you're making a lot of excuses for him. It's the position that you're in when you decide to go with him. Now, even if they'd been running with Fitzpatrick and he'd got COVID, we can all kind of do the what ifs and, the alternate universes and such like. But the offense with Tua in it just has not been good. And let's just leave it there until next season to see what they're going to put around him. We can say that, there was a slip here, all that kind of stuff. But even when he was completing passes, it wasn't for large gains. He doesn't push the ball down the field. He is, I think it was his yards per pass attempt was under 5 yards, and I think the whole offense in the first half were averaging 2 yards a play. So their offense significantly stuttered. Then we had the fake Adam Schefter reporting that Chan Gailey was fired, which turned out to be not true, even though ESPN reported it. And then today, Chan Gailey actually has resigned. He's just decided that I'm done. And pre-season, we wondered, how good an idea was it to bring a guy in that had been out of football for a number of years, plonk him back in with an old quarterback like Fitzpatrick, even though he'd worked with him before at previous teams like the Bills and such, and then try and develop to it. I mean, obviously, I think Chan Gailey he's not. I think he came back to, obviously, he was given the job and it's a nice salary, it's a good thing to have. But I think if it's the idea that he's got to try and progress a quarterback. I don't think he's, the man for that. I think he's kind of, in his senior years, and he's just decided that's not what he wants to do. So Miami have got a lot of questions as to what they want to do in the off season. We'll deal with that at a later date. But the Bills look like, the real deal.
Yeah, and a scary proposition going into the playoffs, as you say.
I mean, theoretically, they could have lost to the Dolphins, and then they would have played the Dolphins in the wild card round, or sorry, super wild card round. See,
Yeah.
seeing as that's what it has to be called now. So theoretically, they could have lost to the Dolphins, and they did that. But these teams just want to try and keep as much consistency as possible. And now a slightly, more interesting game next week, but we'll come on to that.
We then move on to Atlanta, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay win 44-27. For all the comments that we've had about Tom Brady and struggling in this offense, he still finished third in the league for yards with 4,633.
Yeah, there was a lot of incentives having to be met down in Tampa to get bonuses in this game. 3 shovel passes to Antonio Brown in the last 2 minutes got him to I think it was 60 receptions, which meant that he got a $500,000 bonus. So there was some definite insider trading, I think, on the play calling down in Tampa, because they managed to get Mike Evans his touches early to get him 1,000 yards in his bonus, and then they managed to get the money to Antonio Brown as well. So yeah, interesting. But Atlanta now went to the off-season, a whole new setup behind the team, GM, coach, and I mean I don't know if I can say this, but I would peg Eric Bieniemy for that Atlanta job, but there's reasons which are non-football related for that, and I want to maybe look into it a little bit further before I say it, because I will be absolutely slaughtered if I'm wrong on it.
I think I know what you're talking about. Okay. Seattle, San Francisco. Seattle win 26-33. I'm angry. Remember when DK Metcalf was just absolutely storming all over the league at wide receiver?
Mm-hmm.
Someday, okay, it's my own fault. We all know my jinxes, but I put a small wager on him to win the receiving yards title.
Yeah.
Came third. Just completely disappeared. We spoke about it last week. I'm just not convinced on this Seattle offense. They've gotten away from what was working at the start of the year, and now they're back to this run-focused, very conservative style of play, which I don't think is going to work for them in the playoffs.
Well, what happened was they came into the year and nobody had a pre-season, and they played completely against type. It's like Robert De Niro in The Intern, it's not what you expect. And they were throwing the ball all over the shop, allowing Russ to perhaps prepare some food, and it shocked the league, and they were absolutely blowing people apart, and their defense was not really kind of keeping their side of the bargain, and which meant that they're kind of a lot of closer games than they should have been. But then it started to fall apart, and Russell Wilson had bad games. And I think Pete Carroll and Brian Schottenheimer got together and said, right, we've tried to let Russ cook, but it's shown that when he has bad games, we're going to really, really struggle. So they went back to the tried and tested formula of old Seattle, Seahawks football: manage the game, run the ball, play good defense. And that's what they've done over the last kind of 5-6 weeks. So just the amount of targets going his way severely diminished, and that's what's always going to happen. But I don't know. We'll move on to kind of Seattle's playoff opponent in a later part of the episode. But I don't think if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, you should have any real hope for the playoffs, given the other side of the brackets.
Yeah. Staying in the West, Cardinals and Rams played a game. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on the Cardinals, but when your starting QB goes out, it's hard to win the game. It was it was so hard to even watch it when it was on Red Zone this game. The quarterback play was absolutely awful.
Yeah, well, essentially, the reason that I think Sean McVay likes John Wolford is that John Wolford is essentially what Sean McVay wishes his NFL career could have been like. Sub six, sub 6 foot, and just being able to sling it around and do what he wants. Because look, fair play to the guy from finance, went in and did the job. One of the little nuggets I've picked up since the game happened was that Wolford managed to get 5 first downs with his legs, and Jared Goff has had 3 in the first half, and Jared Goff's done it 3 times all year. So he brings a different type of dimension at the quarterback position for the Rams, and I think he was calling plays with a little bit more confidence with Wolford in there, but I still wouldn't want to say that the Rams are going to go deep into the playoffs because of John Wolford. But the Cardinals are just really, really, really disappointing. Really, really, really disappointing this year. I think they're going to have some serious thoughts about how they're going to adjust their offense while keeping the fundamental tenets there for it. And of course, they should just fire Vance Joseph. I don't care where they finished in the overall defensive rankings. I just don't trust any of his defenses, and I just think that it's not a good look for him.
No, I think there needs to definitely be a hard look. I mean, I didn't realize it, but I saw the stat, or however you want to phrase this, this week, that Hopkins exclusively lined up on the left in this offense.
But that's part of the simplicity, and keeping on one side is that's what I've just sort of talked about, is it's the adjustments and the fundamental parts of what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do. But the main problem is that he can't do anything against Jalen Ramsey. He's been totally shut down over 2 games by Jalen Ramsey, and they're going to be doing that for 2 times a year for the next kind of 8 years. So I think they do have to find more creative ways to get DeAndre Hopkins around the football, and crossing the formation perhaps, and doing things like that. But that's not really what Cliff wants to do. But again, they're not running too much hurry up, which they don't necessarily have to do. There's so much potential in that offense, and we've seen flashes of it, but they just haven't. Couldn't get it all to click this year. We expected the run game from last year to continue. It didn't. They got their running yards for the majority of the year through Kyler Murray, which we came into the year saying he's not a running quarterback. Yet they managed to utilize his running ability, very, very well, which was a surprise, and it's a nice surprise to have. But I wouldn't want to rely on it, because the minute he is slight, and the minute he gets hurt, he's out. You've got not a lot behind him. So I think they're going to have to look at how they expect to move the ball on the ground in the off season, and as we've just kind of touched on, perhaps try and be a bit more creative in moving players about.
Yeah, the next game, no controversy at all in this game. The Washington football team 20, the Philadelphia Eagles 14.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Nothing really to talk about there.
No, this was horrific. I mean, this was abhorrent. This was everything that we jokingly talk about the Jags doing this year, the Dolphins doing last year. But when you actually see it, it's like, oh no.
I think what's maybe Mike Florio actually touched on it on Pro Football Talk. The problem with this is,
well, I think we need to explain what this is before we kind of have somebody else's view on it. So essentially, what happened was that Jalen Hurts was playing, and then early in the fourth quarter, Nate Sudfeld suddenly made an appearance, and Jalen Hurts played no further part in the game and was awful. And there was no explanation for it other than they were tanking to lose the game to keep their draft position at 6 rather than 9.
Pretty much, yeah. Because they could have extended their lead had they kicked a field goal, but they decided to go for it on 4th down. They failed on the 4th down conversion, and then thereafter, that was when Sudfeld on the next drive came in. But I think what's so dangerous about this, and Mike Florio made this point on his TV show, web show, whatever it is in the States, but with Chris Sims, they're trying to roll out gambling now to more and more states. And, before there was nowhere that people could kind of go to kind of argue about this, because, gambling's illegal in the States, so it's quite hard to do. As it gets more legal, if people lose money because of a situation such as what happened in Philadelphia, there's going to be people writing to their senators, to their congressmen saying, this shouldn't be allowed. Like, you can't allow gambling if it's going to be rigged like this. I guess, in the UK, we maybe have a slightly different attitude to it, and legally we know that it's a risk when you take that you take that gamble. But this was just so egregious. I kind of understood his point on this. It could kind of set back the gambling movement, or it opens them up to a whole load of risks at that side.
No, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think that's a pretty, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Flimsy.
Shite. I think
Shite.
I'm just going to settle on shite. I think that's a pretty shite take. Yeah, of course it would be disappointing. Yes, of course it would be maddening. But the whole point of sports is that we don't know what's going to happen. If we did everything on paper, we would be 100% winners throughout the year and absolutely fantastic. But this is the whole point. But I thought the Eagles would try and win this game, and that's fine. And that's why I picked them to win. But what I couldn't have foreseen is the fact that they would pull Jalen Hurts. Now, whether or not that's we all say that's ridiculous. You should let Jalen Hurts try and win the football game. Well, down in Miami, I'm pretty sure that all the people that had money on Miami in the weeks that Ryan Fitzpatrick came in and relieved Tua, I don't think they were gambling on that. I don't think they were gambling that Miami were going to definitely switch their quarterback and have Ryan Fitzpatrick do it. So for every side, two sides to every coin. And so you can't, just because you would pick a team and they lose, it happens in a very high profile last game of the season where it determines the winner of the division. It's pretty shite, and everybody thinks that they can see through it, but we don't know. They could just be literally that delusional that they thought that Hurts wasn't, doing it for them, and they wanted perhaps to get it. But then comes the post game press conferences from Doug Peterson, and he's saying, "Yeah, I thought Nate Sudfeld deserved a look." What?
No.
I mean that was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we're going to have to. I think we'll have a whole conversation about the Eagles maybe in kind of in between the playoffs or just after the Super Bowl, because what's going to happen there is going to be very, very interesting. But they are just a complete mess, and the idea that you would actually with a straight face try and say that you thought that Nate Sudfeld would give you either the chance to win, or you thought, he's been here for 4 years, let's run him out for the last part of the fourth quarter. It's pretty kind of mind boggling. But as it refers to gambling, just get in the bin.
Okay. The people who were victim to this game, Giants beat the Cowboys. Giants won 23-19. Obviously, they were then watching the football team beat the Eagles, which knocked them out of contention.
Joe Judge was mad.
He was big mad. I think the only person madder than Joe Judge is our good friend Mr. Sam, because it meant that David Gettleman got kept on.
Yeah. The law of unintended consequences. Nate Sudfeld comes into the game so David Gettleman keeps his job. All right, okay.
Yeah. It's the butterfly effect. I mean, not really too much to say about this game. Giants have every right to be aggrieved, but at the same time, they should have won more games. And I think
they were 31st in offense, and they hired Jason Garrett as their offensive coordinator. Their problem started 8 months ago, not on Sunday night.
I mean, Jason Garrett's in demand. He has had interviews.
I can't believe the Chargers have actually requested an interview for him. I think it's just a joke. I think it's a smokescreen. But Jesus Christ.
Is there a rule that you have to take on at least one ginger for an interview?
I don't know, but get fucking Carrot Top over him. Is Carrot Top even still alive? I don't know.
But, yeah, he is. He's been on the roids. That tells you how much we care about this game.
No.
Yeah, 23-19. Disappointing season for the Cowboys. I would say a a hopeful end to the season for the Giants and at least something to build on.
Yeah, the Cowboys' defense was a real surprise to me. I think the way I described it preseason was a kind of mid-2000s defense for 2020, which just wasn't going to work. And again, on paper, that's what it looked like. But I tell you what, they played really, really well as a unit. I think the coordinator gets a lot of credit for that. Patrick Graham, he's getting a lot of now head coaching buzz. And he came from the Dolphins last year, so he's got that kind of Flores connection. So, obviously whatever he picked up from Flores has meant that he's been able to kind of, solidify that defense and make it a good unit. But their offense was just awful. Now, you say Barkley goes down. I don't know if Barkley being available would have made that great a difference to their ranking as an offense. I don't think it would have made that great a difference to the games. Daniel Jones is still meh, and they have very, very little skill help outside of Saquon Barkley. So they've got to retool on offense. They'll probably not invest as much in the defense as they might have done if they hadn't had this performance this year. So I think they'll go back to the offensive side of the ball and give Gettleman one final chance around, because let's say 2 out of his 3 first-round picks have been okay. Certainly Andrew Thomas has come on later on in the year and done better. Some of his other draft picks have been fine. His free agent acquisitions have done better than expected. And the Giants have unwavering loyalty to people. They keep people around far longer than you would ever expect them to do. So that's probably why he's there. And it's not surprised that he's going to stay on for an extra year, despite what Sam says.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the other New York team. Let's have a moment's silence for Adam Gase. Gone but never forgotten. Jets lose 14-28 to the Patriots.
Gone before midnight, as we would have been able to gamble on here if we had a request a bet. No, just 4 wins to end the season, but it's. Sorry, let me just kind of go back on that.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I've just blanked a little bit. So start that again.
Okay, Adam Gase is gone. So let's have a moment of silence for him. New York Jets go down 14-28 to the Patriots.
Yeah, so no surprise. But now they're locked into the number 2 draft pick. Sorry, no great surprise that he's gone. He was dead man walking from kind of week 4 onwards, given the offensive output. But the Jets are an interesting team to potentially want to be a part of now. Looks like Joe Douglas is going to be able to get to pick the next coach, and then ownership are going to sign off on that. They've got $73 million in cap room, 2 first-round picks. So it's a relatively attractive job. What they're looking for is apparently a kind of CEO-type head coach, someone who doesn't look after either side of the ball. And I wonder if that's because they've looked across I was about to say the Meadowlands, but looked across MetLife and seen what happened with the Giants picking their kind of middle of the road coach and an organizer and a culture builder and a general CEO head coach, and think that's what will do for us. But it's an attractive job. It's an attractive job. Just you would hope that whoever goes in is strong enough to be able to change the culture in the organization.
Yeah. On the other side, the Patriots, looks like they're going to move on from Cam. I'll be interested to see, and it's something that we'll discuss later on during the off-season, but what they do about the quarterback position.
I've already laid out my bet on that. I'm pretty sure Garoppolo heads back.
And I think that's a possibility if Atlanta blow everything up and Matt Ryan's free, because I could see Matty Ice going to San Francisco.
But again, let's just repeat ourselves. Garoppolo can be released for $2.5 million cap hit charge. Matt Ryan cannot be released for that. Matt Ryan will be in the quarterback of Atlanta next year.
Don't know, Jim. We'll see. Let's move on. Another fallen coach. Los Angeles Chargers 38, Kansas City Chiefs 21. Anthony Lynn fired after winning. I would say like the Chiefs were playing their backups. That they were getting ready for the playoffs. That was fine. This Chargers job, probably one of the most attractive.
Certainly middle of the road. They've not got as much cap room, and they've not got multiple first-round picks. So if you're probably talking about attractiveness, you're probably talking about, and not just in the nature of the order of the draft, but I mean the Jags have got 81 million of space, 2 firsts, 2 seconds. Jets have got 73, as we said, 2 firsts and a second, and then the Chargers have got 30 million cap space and only got 1 first, 1 second, 1 third. So
yeah, but the Charger, if you look at the Chargers team, you've got Bosa, you've got that.
Oh no,
so
no,
that
no!
Defense,
As for established players, yeah, no. For established players, that's without doubt. They've got the quarterback. They've hit on the quarterback. They've got the dream. You know, they've had a top 10 pick on a quarterback, and they've absolutely hit it out the park. With Herbert, whether that's was by fortune or by design, they'll always say that they have probably had him rated fucking number 1, which is fine. Who cares? They've got him, and now they have to build around him, and hopefully it'll be an offensive-minded guy.
Yeah, but I just think so for that reason, because of I'm not too bothered about what you've got in cap space and draft picks, because I think the holes on the Chargers, there's a lot less that need addressed. I think the Chargers could have won a lot more games if you had somebody who was better at making decisions.
Game management.
Yeah, game management, a better in-game manager. So I think that's why it's a much more attractive job. That's a job where it's easier to get back into the playoffs, I would argue, than turning the Jaguars into a playoff contender.
Yeah, no, I think it just depends how you want to kind of approach it. The thing I would say about the Chargers is that you are still going to be under the guise of Tom Telesco, who does a pretty good job of picking players for that team. But they just, I mean, the bottom line is they just need to address the offensive line. If they address the offensive line, I think they're a true contender, especially if they allow Herbert to continue on the progression in the way that he has just now. Now, does that mean you keep the offensive coordinator, who I've had questions about over the season? I don't know. I think he was a kind of part and package deal with Anthony Lynn. He should be gone. So, if they choose an offensive-sided head coach who also wants to be a play caller, I think that's probably the route they're going to go down. And it'll be interesting to see who they try and take for that, because we've already mentioned them. Joe Brady's been requested an interview for the Chargers as well, but I don't know off the top of my head. As I say, I've already kind of slotted certain teams already, and I can't off the top of my head just think who would be a good fit for the Chargers right now.
For me personally, I would say McDaniels.
Yeah, but we'll come on to your team in a minute.
Yeah.
Because half of my predictions already come true, and Nick Caserio has been named the GM of the Texans, and I think it's only a matter of time before Josh McDaniels is the head coach of the Houston Texans.
Well, let's go there. Tennessee Titans took on the Texans. Titans win 41-38. Derrick Henry rushed for 250 yards. I could have told you that. I bet his over. It was set at 120 on Sunday, and I saw that as instantly free money against this putrid Texans run defense.
Yeah, but you didn't think it would be double.
I thought he would get to his 2K going against the Texans.
He didn't last week, but all right, okay.
I know, but as the week got on, I just kind of thought it was coming. The Texans just seem to be all out. Anyway, Titans 41, Houston 38. The Titans go into the playoffs. Deshaun Watson, another phenomenal game. Can't really do it by himself, and it looks like Easter Bay's won. Watson doesn't seem to be happy. He's already tweeting out, "Nothing changes." Yay! Great hire. Loads of positivity.
Yeah, well, the funny thing, and the reason that we say that Easterby won, is because the steering group that was hired to find GM candidates presented 5 names, and none of them was Nick Caserio.
Yes. Fuck me.
And yeah, apparently, Jack Easterby walks into Cal McNair's office and says, "So we're hiring Nick?" Yeah, Jack, yeah, do whatever you want. And all of a sudden, it's a done deal. Flies into interview in inverted brackets, and later that night, he's already got a deal. So yeah, he can be pissed off as much as he wants to, Sean, but he's signed the contract. He's there. He's just going to have to lump it. But we're kind of mishmashing what teams are doing in the off season and the games themselves, because obviously what's going to happen in the off season is more interesting now for some teams. But I tell you what, the Texans gave them a run for the money on offense. I mean, this was only a 3-point win by a team going into the playoffs that are now expected to kind of hold the Baltimore team. This was not the type of win you would wanted as Tennessee going into the playoffs, because you struggle to beat a 4-win team here, and your defense has got a lot of questions going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely shown some things about the Titans, but yeah, we'll talk about their opponents and how we think they'll do a bit later on in the show. Let's go on to another nothing game. Vikings-Lions. Vikings won 37-35. This is actually a really interesting game. Justin Jefferson looked phenomenal. Their plan for the game was clearly just feed them and let them get the record. I don't know if he had a bonus tied to or something, or if it was just to get him the record, but a good game that meant absolutely nothing.
I really wasn't going to say anything until you mentioned Justin Jefferson. My original plan for this game was to dissect it in the following way. I really couldn't care. I really, really couldn't care. It's just two teams which kind of go off into off-season limbo. And other than what you've mentioned about Justin Jefferson, yeah, I mean, this is it. Just no.
Do you think Detroit move on from Matt Stafford?
I kind of hope so. I mean, I just like Matt Stafford in general. I think he kind of, plays the quarterback position in a really interesting way, and his very has been wasted for many, many years in Detroit. And I think that if there was to be a purge, it would be good for him and good for Detroit, I think. Because he's in that kind of, mid-range where he's, 34? Maybe another kind of 4 years, 3 years kind of top level, and they could certainly do that. But I think that there's going to be such a saturation and such an availability of quarterbacks that you might want to allocate those dollars somewhere else if it's possible to get out from it. So if he's there, yeah, all right, that's fine. It's just he's a franchise quarterback, and you could do you could do a lot worse than Matthew Stafford. But at the same time, I would quite like to see him in a different situation. You look at other players, go to different situations and absolutely flourish. And I would like to maybe see that with Matt Stafford.
And just to clarify, Matt Stafford turns 33 on the 7th of February.
All right, so 34. I wasn't that far out.
Yeah, you weren't that far off, but I'm just still giving him that extra year, in the league. Las Vegas at the Denver Broncos. Move on to Las Vegas. Las Vegas won 32-31. Nobody cared about this game other than John Elway, who has stepped up from the GM position.
I'm really annoyed about it because it seems so obvious. And last week we were saying how with the ownership difficulties that him staying would give a semblance of stability. And of course, what should have gone through my mind, what should have been said, was that he would still stay, but he would potentially give up the GM role. And he did try to pass it off to his number 2, but he's decided to retire instead. So the job's open. They're going to interview for it and keep him there, because however much you try and paint it, he theoretically did build a team which had Peyton Manning as quarterback, but he did theoretically build a team which for 4 years was very good, and it's all fallen apart since Manning left, and he's not been able to find a quarterback to replace him. So he gets to continue to be a legend, continue to get paid by Denver, but manages to sidestep all the difficulties and not being able to find a quarterback since Manning left. So it seems so obvious now that it's happened that I'm really annoyed we didn't talk about it last week.
It's actually a pretty smart move by Elway. because at least provide some stability to the organisation whilst they're going through this ownership situation. And I'm going to give him credit and say that, he's at least recognised that he's not the right person to be doing the GM job anymore, and it should be someone else. And perhaps he can act as a buffer until this ownership situation is resolved.
I think it's a secret indictment on what he thinks of Drew Lock as well, because I think he thinks that if he stayed GM, he would have to pick another quarterback or bring in another quarterback, potentially try and maybe kind of take one of the veterans that would be available and bring them in, because and he would be lambasted for it if it didn't work out. So I think he's bought himself a little bit of time. He could easily, in like 3 years, I mean, he's only 60. I mean, in a couple of years, he could easily move back. So it keeps him in the organization, keeps him part of that organization. And so it just seems so simple, and so that I really know we didn't kind of identify it as a possibility last week. For the Raiders, just fix your defense, man. Just fix your defense. I don't care about anything else. You 4 points, and despite having perhaps a limited quarterback of Derek Carr, even though he does very well at what he does, and he's managed to push the ball further down the field this year than he has in any other year, you just fix your defense, because until your defense is competitive, you're always going to be battling, always going to be an uphill battle and really, really struggling to stay in games or get down and come back early. So just fix the defense, and whether that's by personnel or scheme, I think both are going to change. But they'll get the coordinator in, and then Gruden and Mayock will get to work and maybe trying to fill a few pieces on that defense.
Moving on, Jacksonville took on the Colts. Doug Marrone was also relieved of his duties. Jacksonville was 14-28. Colts go marching. Jonathan Taylor's looking really good. Yeah. That's all I can really say.
Finally coming good in what we kind of said about in pre-season. Just took a little while for him to, I don't know what it was to, have that light bulb moment and for everything just to become clear for him. But, this type of day is not what we expected, because it's an extraordinary day, kind of 250 yards. But mind you, Derrick Henry seems to do that, whatever he wants against certain teams. But we certainly thought that he was going to be a far, far bigger piece throughout the season than he was just compared to the last couple of weeks. And so he's hitting a stride again going into the playoffs. But the only good news for Jacksonville is that Trevor Lawrence has declared for the draft. He's not going to stay in school and screw everybody. And so they're now trying to get Urban Meyer, which I think is more kind of a Florida connection rather than anything else. I think it's trying to revitalize people in the area who remember Urban as the great Florida coach who won championships. But then they're saying that if they don't get Urban Meyer, they're going to want to have a run at Ryan Day. I don't know what their obsession is with going after Ohio State coaches or former Ohio State coaches. I'm still trying to find the link, but that's what they're saying. So they're in a total off-build, rebuild. It's going to be interesting to see it, but we'll have many conversations about who they're taking number one overall. But certainly a player that should be in consideration is declared for the draft and will be there come April.
Yes. Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Cleveland beat the Pittsburgh backups 24-22.
Barely.
Barely. And in the most Brownsiest of Brownsy things to ever Browns, they make the playoffs and their head coach gets COVID and it's all gone to shit.
Yeah.
We can save it for the preview in a bit. I just thought that was very Brownsy.
Yeah, but at the same time, Baltimore have gone through a COVID patch. The Titans look as though they're about to go through a COVID patch. Every team in the NFL has had difficulty with COVID at some point, meaning that games either had to be moved or they lost personnel for a game throughout the year. And it does seem a little bit schadenfreude that the Browns are having to get it this first time of getting to the playoffs after, 21 years or so.
Well, it's the fact that they've got it twice now, because they've already had it, the week previously when all their wide receivers were out.
Yeah, COVID's a fickle mistress. Fickle. You think you've got it and you get rid of it, and then all of a sudden it's back with somebody else. Because how Stefanski is going to be able to say that he's not interacted with or been in close contact with half the team, I don't know. So I don't know what their contact tracing is going to be like. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to be able to say that, oh, it was only wide receiver, so it was in that wide receiver room. That's how he did it. But we'll see.
Maybe he's very aloof as a coach.
Yes.
And the last game from week 17, the Baltimore Ravens, your Baltimore Ravens, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, or Bungles. Baltimore Ravens win 38-3. The run game is just looking phenomenal for the Ravens. Lamar only threw for 113 yards, but he didn't need to.
He didn't need to do anything. On fleek, on point, what kind of tremendously cringy old sayings can we possibly say about the run game? 400 yards.
It was hype.
Hype, is that one? All right, okay.
Yeah.
400 yards, but it's against the Bengals. It's going to be a little bit. It certainly will breed a lot of confidence going into the playoffs, especially given that it's not just, it's not kind of an outlier over the last 5 weeks. It's really, really come together for the run game, and it just kind of hit a high point against the Bengals, who were just basically trying to get to the end of the season. So Zach Taylor's keeping his job with Calum. I'm sure he'll be happy.
I mean, Mike Brown is not going to pay somebody not to do their job. Zach Taylor's got his job until his contract expires.
I think it might be as simple as that.
Yeah, and with that wraps up our 2020 regular season. I thought I'd just go over some quick stats. The passing leader for the regular season in terms of yards was Deshaun Watson. In terms of touchdowns thrown, it was Aaron Rodgers with 48, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson tied on 40, and rushing leader Derrick Henry, receiving leader was Stephon Diggs. So yeah, it was, I think the only one that I predicted was Derrick Henry at the start of the season, but all in all, a pretty interesting regular season. It certainly kept us on our toes. We had no idea what was going to happen week to week.
Yeah, because in a strange kind of way, a lot of the things that we suggested pre-season would happen, did happen, but the end season, it just became so difficult to kind of follow who was being consistent, trying to say, well, this team beat that team by this margin. This is where they are in the kind of strength of schedule. I mean, it's all just kind of went totally left field for about the kind of middle 8 weeks of the season, yeah. and then it crystallized. So we were good early on, and we were good late on. But I tell you what, in the middle of the season, it was just very, very difficult to kind of get a handle on who was where because of a lot of the COVID and injuries and a lot of the moving about. So. It's I would just say thank you to anyone that's listened to us babble rubbish for 17 weeks.
Yes, and don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're still here to babble rubbish and guide you through the playoffs as well. And on that depressing note for our listeners, let's go on to the playoffs. We open with the Colts taking on the Bills. The Bills open as 7-point favourites here. Do we see any way for the Colts to win this one? I just don't believe in the Colts offense, the passing offense.
No, but I think their defense and run game, if they get a lead, can help protect Rivers from having to do anything. So it's all about the early stages of this game as far as I'm concerned. Now, Brian Daboll will not be there next year. He's done a fantastic job over the last 3 years with Josh Allen. And what I would say is that it's clear from last year's performance of the playoffs that they have a specific plan. And it'll be interesting what that plan is for this Indianapolis defense. It's very difficult to go against Buffalo, but I think +7 in the playoffs against an 11-win team and a top defense is difficult to justify as far as I'm concerned. I think the Buffalo probably will win, but I wouldn't take the -7.
I'm the opposite. I just think Buffalo are such a wagon here that I'm happy to take them at the 7. I think they win this. I think the defense is good. I think the defense can cause enough issues for the Colts that the Bills can just get off and kind of do what they did to Miami. Really. Albeit that the Colts' run game is significantly better than Miami's run game. I don't know. I'm just quite bullish on this Bills team.
I think you've got every right to be. I sometimes wonder just if we latch on too much to the kind of the in team a little bit and then forget that it is a game of football at the end of the day. And I think if this was in the regular season and you were saying that the Colts were getting 7 points, I don't think we would have any doubt and you would take Indy with the +7. I've already said I think the Buffalo home advantage, a little bit cold, Phillip Rivers being a little bit erratic, it's definitely in Buffalo's favour and they should win this game. But if we're talking about the +7 or who's going to win the game, it's completely different as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no. I agree. We're having two separate conversations, but also, I think we're agreed that we both think that the Bills will win, and we disagree when it comes to the 7+ margin. My only question to you is, if you saw the Chiefs from last year at -7, would you still take them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean last year,
and that's what I think this Bills offense is. It's the Chiefs offense from last year, pretty much.
Stretch, but look, it's all fine to have a belief in it. I just think that's a little bit of a stretch. I don't think they're anywhere near as explosive as what the Chiefs were last year. I think they're obviously one of the best offenses this year, but I don't think they're anywhere close to the level of what the Chiefs were last year.
Sorry, maybe a bit of a poor analogy. They certainly don't have the weapons that the Chiefs did last year, but I just think they're the best offense in football just now, in my opinion. And I think taking the best offense at -7, I'm comfortable doing.
No problem. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The Rams at Seattle. Seattle are favoured by 4.5 points. McVay's come out and said that he's not going to declare who the quarterback is until game day. So it could be Goff. It could be the accountant.
Yeah. Have we picked a single NFC West game right this entire year?
No. And this is us being toyed with.
No. It's really, really difficult to try and say who's got the upper hand because let's say that the last 6 weeks of the year, Seattle played like they did the first 6 weeks, and it was completely flipped as to how they played. You would be backing Seattle the whole way because of the way they've come in and the way that Russell Wilson was, moving the football. But that's not what Seattle are right now. And if you're talking about kind of, a defensive battle and then two non-efficient offenses, I think you have to take the Rams.
I agree.
What's the plus on this? What's the plus minus on this?
Seahawks are 4.5 point favourites.
Yeah, Rams. I mean, I think the Rams straight out is probably a pretty kind of good value bet for this one, and it's really, really difficult because if you say John Wolford against Russell Wilson, it would be really, really difficult to justify that choice. Even if you've got Jared Goff, it still might be difficult to justify that choice. But on the whole, I just think that the Rams will probably have a little bit extra the way they've been playing the last kind of few weeks of the season just to get it on the Seattle. But I think it's going to be really, really tight, and I think it's going to be low scoring. I mean, if either team breaks 24 points, I'll be really, really surprised.
Gentleman Dave gave me an interesting fact. Jalen Ramsey has given up 20 yards per game in coverage this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he took care of DK Metcalf pretty handily the last game that they played. I don't think so in the first one. I think the first one was a bit of a different story, but certainly the second game, Jalen Ramsey kept a really, really tight leash. But again, that was when I think the Seahawks were trying to open things up, but they've completely condensed right down. So very, very difficult. I mean, the Rams' defense have just kind of, I've not rated them as much as you have, but every week they get the job done. And it's very, very difficult to get away from that fact. And if the Rams can run the ball like they have at certain points in this year, then I think that they've got to be seen as really the kind of favourites in our eyes, despite what the bookies might say.
I so I've got a question for you on this game. Then, say Goff starts, and we see the Rams get, we see the Goff face, right? Because he's now seen him play against the Cardinals. Do you think McVay is he on a shorter leash for Wolford?
Yes.
See, that's what I think as well.
The way Wolford played was not stunning, but it was enough for you to be able to say that he could do what McVay was asking of him. And so there's a trust level there, I think, to a certain extent. Now, Goff's not had that trust throughout the season. Sometimes he's been great, sometimes he's been god-awful, sometimes he's just been middle of the road. And look, sometimes these coaches, they just like a guy, and they say, you know what, I'm going to run with you for a while. And it would be very, very hard to say you've got a $30+ million quarterback, and then you've got a guy who was on LinkedIn 18 months ago, and say I'm going to replace him with it. But I mean, why not? If you truly believe that the person who started 1.5 quarters is not getting it done, and then the previous week the other guy was getting it done, we maybe sometimes attach too much to these kind of numbers and who's the starter and who's the number one pick. So who's the hot hand is the other kind of good old cliche in the NFL. I could see if it was not working on offense for the Rams and he threw a pick some point early in the second quarter, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could see a switch.
Yep. No, I think that's a definite possibility. So it sounds like to me you're kind of in lockstep with me in taking the Rams in this.
Yeah.
Against the spread.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to take the Rams outright.
That's what I want to lean into as well. And the reason why I want to lean into it is because like we've just discussed, I think that McVay has confidence in Wolford and will make that change if Goff is stinking up the place. And he's even got a built-in excuse. He can just say, oh, it was the thumb. How
strange is that at the beginning of the episode we're talking about the outrage and the writing to senators of a quarterback switch. I'm saying that bettors wouldn't go into betting on Miami for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that's essentially exactly what you're saying. I think the Rams are just going to win outright. I'm not going to hedge it on a quarterback change. I'm not going to hedge it on Wolford coming in. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that I have more
doing this on the basis that you think you're going to pick the Rams because you think Wolford's going to come in.
No, I don't think Wolford's going to come in, but I just think that McVay, because the problem has been in the past, if the Rams get down, McVay just sticks with Goff. Like you see, Goff has that Goff face, and then he's just staying the rest of the game. I now think that if that happens, they will make a change. I'm just saying, if it's going wrong, he will make a change, which previously he has not done. He's stuck with them, and it's been infuriating.
Yeah. Inbuilt excuse. I don't know if you're moving on to this, but the inbuilt excuse being that he's kind of just had surgery on his thumb, and they're just trying it out and it wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly. So you can easily do it if it's not working, like the first couple of drives, first 3 drives, or even at the half. So, but I still like the Rams to do it. Tampa Bay at Washington, night game. Tampa Bay are favoured by 8.5 points.
Bruce Arians has made a good point in that they're not playing the 7-9 Washington football team. They're playing the 5-1 Alex Smiths. There is a perception, obviously, that because Washington's the NFC East and lost a lot of games and in a poor division and they're the only playoff team with a losing record, that this is just a done deal. This is just Tampa going in. I think that's the right idea because I think the attitude that Arians has to point out that when Alex Smith started, they've won 5 games and only lost 1. It is the right way to go about it because these are the type of trap games I think that can pop up in the playoffs very, very early on. And Washington, your favourite defensive front, Calum, have the type of defense that could cause Tampa Bay a surprise problem, I think.
And also the fact that this is this is an evening game for Tom Brady.
Past his bedtime.
Past his bedtime. So this is one where, we discussed the Bills being 7-point favourites and you didn't like such a high line in the playoffs. This is one where I definitely don't like Tampa Bay at 8.5. No, I'm taking Washington against the spread, and there's always an upset in the playoffs, and I kind of have this one circled as the upset. It's on upset watch. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington go through.
I find it hilarious, but I think if you're talking about true upsets, yes, I've kind of had that circled as well, just because it's a great story and all the moving parts are there to be had. And I think, I don't know, has Mike Evans been cleared for this yet? Not that will cause me great concern if he's not, because of the talent that they've got, behind it. But that just sometimes throws team off a little bit when they haven't got that one player that's required and they have to move people around. Godwin and Antonio Brown will be fine on their own, I'm pretty sure. But I think it's too easy and too simple just to say, yeah, Tampa Bay are going to wipe the floor with them. It could easily happen. We could be looking at this on Monday morning going, my God, we were fucking idiots for even contemplating that Washington could keep it close. But you know what? I tell you what, a 3-point game in the fourth quarter is going to be real kind of bum twitchy time, because I don't know. I just think this Ron Rivera Washington football team has been a very, very nice surprise, absent all the kind of Dwayne Haskins stuff, and they're actually going to be in an interesting position going forward. But that's off-season chat.
Yeah, it does look like Mike Evans is going to play. It was only a hyperextended knee.
Didn't look good. Didn't look good when he did it.
No, but I think there was probably more an abundance of caution, since they were playing for nothing, apart from Antonio Brown, who was playing for that dollar. But I mean, even if you didn't have Mike Evans, you've still got Brown and Godwin, so there's enough pieces there that you can play about with. I just have a funny feeling about this game. I don't know. There's just something about it. I don't think I'm brave enough to bet it, like Washington straight up, but I just have an inkling. So that probably means that Tampa Bay are going to win 50-0.
Yep. No, that's what I'm saying. It's got. I mean, we like to try and find these ones where we think, actually, let's go against the grain, and this might be the game for it. But is it more likely we're going to be thinking, why do we even dedicate 5 minutes to talking about the Washington football team over the Bucks? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. We move on to the Sunday slate. Early game is Baltimore at Tennessee. Baltimore are favoured by 3.5 points here. Yeah. I was surprised that they opened as favourites.
Road favourites.
Yeah. Have people not watched Baltimore in playoffs last 2 years?
Have people not watched fucking Baltimore against Tennessee, never mind the playoffs. This is a few weeks ago I said that the Ravens entering the playoffs not as the superstar MVP-led team might be of benefit to them, and I think that's coming to fruition. If Baltimore can run the ball like they have the last couple of games, I don't think this is going to be a close game whatsoever. I think Baltimore's defense is going to stand up to Derrick Henry a hell of a lot more, and the amount of times that Derrick Henry's ran the ball over the last 2 weeks back to back, how that guy doesn't break down, I do not know. But he's certainly not going to get 250 yards on Baltimore, famous last words. But I think that Baltimore are a team that could pound Tennessee into submission, and they're not going to get A.J. Brown heroics to try and save them from a field goal that goes off the upright against Baltimore. I think Baltimore, this could be, if you talk about the surprise games, no one's going to be surprised if Baltimore wins. I think people are going to be surprised by the amount of points that Baltimore wins by. I think this is a sneaky blowout game for the Ravens.
I mean, as you mentioned earlier, they did meet in Week 11. Tennessee won. in overtime, 30-24. But it does have to be caveated that there was no Calais Campbell in that game for Baltimore.
We were missing a lot of players in that game.
Yeah.
But that was also just right smack bang in the middle of our kind of COVID fiasco. It got worse for the Steelers game, but that was just at the beginning of the COVID fiasco. And so we lost to the Patriots in that kind of hailstorm the week before, played the Titans, were winning. Titans came back to win. And then we lost to the Steelers. And then after that, it's been kind of, plain sailing and running the ball for, the best rushing team in the NFL. And we've got a good defense, a good running game. That's a good formula for the playoffs. And I just think that this is going to be a completely different story this time. And I think that the Baltimore are going to absolutely blow Tennessee away. And I know that's famous last words, and I can't believe I'm putting that hoodie on them. But I think this is going to completely change the narrative about the kind of the playoff slide, and they can't get done the playoffs and all this kind of stuff. So there we go. They're the best rushing team and the worst passing team. Couldn't make it up.
Yeah, I mean, last game Henry ran for 133 yards. I don't see him getting that again this week. I really like Baltimore in this game. I think that, you know what, the thing is out on the book is out on how you beat Tennessee. If you can stop Derrick Henry and put it on Ryan Tannehill, you can beat this team. You just have to have a good enough defense to do that. And
I think that's a slight oversimplification, but obviously, what's the main focus of their offense is the run game, so they can run play action off it and they can do that. But I would just be wary of saying that it was that simple. But I understand what you mean.
Yeah, there's obviously a bit more nuance to it, but I do think when you boil it down, the teams that have been successful against Tennessee have been able to stop them establishing the run. And I think Baltimore have the defense that they can actually do that this time around. And yeah, I don't know. Part of me, maybe it's a little bit biased. I also really want this for Lamar. I just don't like this narrative about him not being a good quarterback just because he's been unfortunate in his first 2 playoff appearances when he's so young. It just really aggravates me. And I just kind of like it. I've always liked him since college, and I'd like him to have some success.
Oh, I mean, I'm not talking about Super Bowl, but I just think one playoff win at a minimum would just settle that.
It just shuts that narrative up.
Yeah, it just sets it all away because it's certainly not deserved, but it's very, very difficult to get away from it. These are the games that matter. And a lot of players, their legacy is dependent on what was their playoff record. And if he starts his career 0-3 in the playoffs, very, very difficult to come back from that mentally, never mind kind of professionally. And, only certain teams are perennially in the playoffs. And if you go back to back games of one and done in the playoffs, very difficult to get away from, as you say, that narrative.
Yeah. The next game, this is a game where I'm absolutely devastated that I don't live in America because I really want to watch this broadcast of it. Chicago at New Orleans. It's being broadcast on Nickelodeon with SpongeBob.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's going to be SpongeBob doing the halftime show. There's going to be slime when teams score touchdowns. There will also be a traditional broadcast with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, which unfortunately is what we, the British public, will get. But
you did that very well because I couldn't tell if you were taking the piss or not.
No. It's what they're doing. There's a dual broadcast. So there's one on CBS and then it's also being shown on Nickelodeon. I think Nate Burleson's doing it as the actual commentator, but there's going to be like special graphics for it. I think it's part of the NFL's push to try and get the next generation of kids watching football.
Right.
I'm surprised you hadn't heard about this.
No, I was focusing on real football.
Right. Well, I like to stay up to date on all the stories, Dan, that impact on.
You cast a wide net, Calum.
Yes, I do. At least one of us is informed. So anyway, Chicago at New Orleans. New Orleans open as 9.5-point favourites.
Yeah, 9.5's a horrible, horrible line. I think because I think it's right about where it should be. New Orleans at home, that's fine, that's safe. Chicago, Mitchell, New Orleans defense. Sorry, I'm just kind of like spitballing my mind just now to try and figure out whether 9 points is good or bad. I think getting close to double digits in the playoffs is always a bit questionable, and you should always think about the underdog at that point. But I think, if New Orleans played like they did against Minnesota, then this is not going to be in question. It's going to be over by halftime. What's your kind of thinking? Because this is one where I think New Orleans win, but are we saying that it's going to be a total and utter blowout? Is this dependent on Alvin Kamara rather than Drew Brees?
I don't think it matters about Kamara. I think Michael Thomas is healthy. They held him out last week to give him that extra break. The Bears defense has not been great this year. I'm maybe a little bit coloured by what I saw against Green Bay. I think there's only one really bad team in the playoffs, and it's Chicago. And I think I'm not overthinking this. If this was regular season and it was Chicago at New Orleans and we saw them, New Orleans favoured by 9.5 points, we'd take it.
I don't know if they would have taken 9.
I think I would. Drew Brees in the Dome.
I would take 6. Don't know if I'd take 9. You got remember New Orleans over the last couple of years of, both Minnesota games. It didn't work out for them.
That's true. That is a very good point. I'll give you that. I guess the question on Kamara is a fair one, but it's Sunday, so he's able to exit the protocol. I think he'll play. I'm not overthinking this. I think New Orleans are a much better team. I'm happy to take them at 9.5.
Yeah. New Orleans going to win this game, but I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to take the Bears plus 10. Because I'm not allowed to take it all the way down to 6 for the Saints, but I can add it up to 10 for Chicago, and I don't know, just 10 points in the playoffs is pretty difficult.
You know what, Dan? That is your right, and yeah, I just think what makes us think that Chicago will keep this close. Now they have met previously. They met in week 8, and the Saints won it in overtime, 26-23. But that was at Soldier Field.
Yeah, that was a different set of circumstances. That was Foles playing as well at night, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
no, I can appreciate that, and the dome does make dome does make such a big difference. But I don't think this is about Breeze. I think this is about all the other aspects of the New Orleans Saints. If the New Orleans Saints can win, with Breeze just being a compliment, that's how they win the Super Bowl this year. They don't win it off the back of Drew Brees and his arm. And so I think what they're going to do is they're going to see, focus Kamara and all these other kind of short passes. And I just think Kamara could be on pace for another kind of 4 touchdown game. And you know what, bugger it. I'm going to put a tenner on Kamara getting 3 touchdowns, because I don't think you can do anything for 4, but you can certainly do for 3. And I think that would be, at least something to keep you occupied for this game, because I'm not touching the number in real life, but for our hypothetical purposes, I'm going to take Chicago plus 10.
Well, actually, let us see if we can offer that to our listeners. No, we can't, because the player props are not out yet, so I can't even tell you what that'll be.
It'll be something ridiculously low, like 5-1 or something like that.
I know. I don't think it'll be. How many total touchdowns? Yeah. This is really boring. Total touchdowns. No, I can't see it. So anyway, but I think that's probably worth a punt on it. I just don't think. Are Chicago better than Minnesota?
Third A and third B, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's pretty much the same matchup.
Well, I mean, then surely that goes in my favor.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But that's also my argument for why I think that they will struggle against this Saints offense, right? Especially the rushing attack, and why I think they'll do a lot better. You know, they're Chicago this year are kind of a middle of the road defense. They're not elite in any area. They're just meh.
Yep. No, and I understand that it's a bit difficult to say that. I think the Bears will stay within 10, but Kamara will get a minimum of 3 touchdowns. but that's the type of game that I just expect it to be, you know?
Okay. Last game is Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh are now favoured by 6 points. No Stefanski. We know there probably could be a few others that are ruled out. I've not got that information available to me as we record for anybody else. But it's hard to see past Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm questionable about Pitt because of the way that they finished the season. But at the same time, the idea that the main play caller for Cleveland is not going to be there, they're going to thrust someone who hasn't called plays all season in there for the biggest playoff game against the Pittsburgh defense that, despite it being annoying, you know, is still very good. I think 6 points is too low. I think, you know, if Cleveland fall apart like you would expect it to fall apart, given they go no practice, you know, different play caller. I mean, how they're going to be able to facilitate that, I don't know, because obviously nothing can be done in real time for Stefanski to try and like coach the game from home or anything like that. So very, very, very difficult situation for Cleveland. But I don't care because they're both AFC North and one of them's got to win. I would prefer it to be Cleveland, but I just can't see that happening. I just think Pittsburgh will be nice and rested, healthy, and they'll come out and this game will be over by halftime. And Baker Mayfield will get his fifth year activated from his contract because he's done enough. But that's again a conversation for the offseason.
Yeah, I mean he's got them into the playoffs.
Well, they find. I think the main thing is that after 3 weeks, you were like, "Oh my god, this is a disaster." But they finally found a balance about how to use him and what to do, and it worked, and it got them to the playoffs. And he'll ingratiate himself, and it really depends. Does this mean he'll go back and do all his commercials now? Who knows? That's the true question of the offseason, whether or not Baker Mayfield will go back to his endorsements, because who knows? Maybe that's the difference.
Yeah, but yeah, for me, I'm taking Pittsburgh as well. So I guess that wraps up our preview for the week ahead. We will be back next week to review the first wildcard round and look ahead to, I don't know, what's the next round even called? Have they come up with a snazzy name for it?
Well, I think it's just the divisional.
Yeah, okay. We'll be back next week for the divisional.
The dirty divisional. I don't know. Why it had to be called Super Wildcard, I'm not quite sure, but...
Because they had expanded it by 1, so now it became Super.
Blech.
Yeah. Anyway, we will see you next week, and make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And yeah, bye for now.